Welcome back to the Care Collective podcast, where we share stories that heal, tools that help, and words that hold you. I'm your host, Mikayla Cluxton, and I am so excited to share today's conversation with my new friend, Kristy. She's been a nurse practitioner for over 20 years with a variety of experience, but she spent a lot of her career walking families through some of life's hardest goodbyes, helping them find peace, dignity, and love at the end of life. In this episode, Kristy shares what she's learned from decades at the bedside, how to turn fear into peace, how to prepare for conversations we often avoid, and how to think about what we can leave behind instead of what we're losing, or even taking from our families. It's not a story about death, but it's about a story filled with legacy, compassion, and finishing well. So grab a snack, take a deep breath, and let's step into this conversation together. Thank you for being willing to share your story today. And I know that I was touched by our conversation last time we talked, and being able to learn from your experience and your story. So just to start, Kristy, can you just share a little bit about yourself and your background? I know you mentioned you're a nurse practitioner, right? What's kind of drawn you into this world of care and has brought you here today?
Well, thank you for the nice things you said. Thanks for having me here. So, I am a nurse practitioner. I have over 20 years of experience nursing and at the bedside. And now I do palliative care. In those 20 plus years, I've helped so many people, having been in the ICU, deal with death and dying and talk about what's next, making medical decisions around that. I've also had the personal experience of doing that with my grandfather and my grandmother. And even though my family thought they were prepared, we learned, unfortunately, that we weren't, and we weren't able to honor my grandfather's wishes all the way. And so I just have felt like there's a better way to help people have these conversations, and that doing it in the moments of crisis and tragedy are the worst times to do that. So I think that is why I'm here. I've experienced it at the bedside. I've experienced it in person with my own family, and we can definitely do better.
Yeah. No, I think it's a topic that's really heavy that a lot of people don't, for good reason, don't want to talk about. Right? Like it's not an easy conversation to have with somebody as they're nearing the end of their life. And then you see that every single day.
Yeah, it is really hard. We have made the word death and the word dying and die very difficult to bring up in just normal conversation, but it definitely should be a normal conversation that we're having with the people that we love because, in all honesty, we all die. Not one of us is going to escape that, and not one of us is going to escape losing someone. And so we plan for our birthdays, we plan for births, we have people designated to walk us through the whole birthing process and make a plan. We have wedding planners. So, in this big event of our life that we know we're going to have, why aren't we doing that same thing? It baffles me.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's uncomfortable and it's sad. And those feelings don't go away, but they become much easier to face. And when you're looking at this as an event to be had rather than this really sad thing that happens, where you can focus on that person and your family and make it that can be really beautiful. The sad doesn't go away. The fear of it gets better as you talk about it, but it really can be a beautiful experience where you did what that person needed and wanted. I just did a bunch of questions with my mom to ask her all sorts of questions that we need to plan for. And one of the most recent ones was, in your last moments, mom, what do you think you want? And my mom is a very cold person. She has been cold all of her life. And so her answer was warm blankets. That's what I want. I want to be warm when I go out. I
well,
can do that. I could do that. And
yeah.
I can know I gave her what she wanted and needed.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the most at my age, the only thing I've ever heard my parents say is always like, we'll just be listening to a song at church and they'll be like, you should make sure that this song is played at my funeral. And I'm like, this came out of why are we talking about this? Where did this come from? Like, what? But I do think that it's the kind of things that there's probably more conversations we could build in every day, right? Is what you're saying of, or making it more normalized to have these kind of conversations. So what are some things you have kind of seen lend itself? Is this something that, I'm sure it's a combination of things that you're like, hey mom, we're gonna sit down and talk about this? Or is it the everyday conversations you find ways to weave this in and to bring it up in ways that aren't so
I
overt and in
think
the moment a little bit alarming?
Yeah. So I think you need both. I think you need to have dedicated time with a dedicated agenda to say, okay, this is coming. I see this coming. When we have parents that are becoming elderly and going through multiple illnesses, multiple hospitalizations, multiple infections, or chronic illness, So those people, I tell them every time there's a new event, you need to kind of reevaluate and have this discussion again. This is your third hospitalization in the last 3 months, so we can kind of project that this is going to continue to keep happening. Is this how you want the rest of your life to look? But you and I, as children with healthy, younger-ish parents, um, Ozzy Osbourne just died. Bill Kilmer died this year. Those are things I brought up with my mom as well. Like, Val Kilmer fought this long, drawn out battle with cancer and
Right.
very valiantly and beautifully. Is that what you would want, mom? Like I don't know what decisions I would make for myself. Cultural events offer a lot of opportunities for discussion. Other people dying that we know offer opportunities for discussion. Other people being hospitalized offer all sorts of opportunity for us to make it personal. If our friend just died, we went to a funeral. Hey, let's talk about, what's gonna happen with us when that time comes. There are other things too that I think people don't know to talk about, like what happens when you can't drive anymore, or
Mm,
what happens when you can't be alone anymore and you're losing that autonomy. How can we honor your dignity, and what's the best way to deal with that? And then the one other thing I want to say about that too is in the case of dementia, sometimes our answers to what we want at end of life are a little bit different. And we
right.
often don't evaluate, if I get dementia, what then? And so those are just super important conversations to have.
Yeah, and something I wanted to ask as well too, because we'll definitely get into the caregiving relationship and dealing with parents and the aging side of things as well too. But I know you mentioned in your healthcare experience, you also sounds like you have a fair amount of experience, people dealing with other terminal illnesses or people that are younger and still have to face these kind of questions much sooner than they would anticipate. What would you say you kind of learned from those conversations with families and how to still make death the dignified event that you were saying it is, and to turn it into something that we carry more meaning to than to just see it as the end and you're gonna spend the rest of your life grieving.
Right. That's a really, really hard question. And I have unfortunately seen many young people die. When you asked that question, the first person that came to mind was a young 44-year-old male who was just such a sweet man. And his family was so sweet. While he was in the hospital, his daughter was upstairs having a baby, and he had terminal cancer. He was so malnourished, you could see, all of his ribs, and he had all sorts of procedures that we had to do. And the thing that people don't know is that when you're sick in the hospital, most of the time we are not able to give you your chemotherapy. You have to be well enough to get to the cancer center. And so I saw this man over multiple hospitalizations, and I kept telling him, we're reaching the end and your family is so important to you. You have a new grandbaby. Won't you consider not spending your time in the cancer center? This is non-curable, right? Won't you consider having your family around you and making memories? You're still able to walk around, you're still able to do things, make some more memories, make videos, have family dinners, as often as you can, rather than spending your time here with me in the hospital.
Right.
And he had another outlook, which is a perfectly fine outlook, which was to continue to fight for his family. There's nothing wrong with that outlook. But I think we need to talk about and consider that there are other options.
Mm,
Unfortunately, he did pass away in the hospital, but his family can walk away from that saying, Dad did everything he could to be with us as long as he could, even though he was uncomfortable.
right.
But it's such an important conversation. And I want to touch too on what you said about how to direct people when they're in their last days. I had a beautiful conversation just yesterday. I think there are like 10 family members in this semi-private room, and it was a little cramped, but this was a 93-year-old woman who was still like up around cooking and taking care of her family still at 93. Incredible
Wow,
woman. But
that's crazy.
she's coming to the end of her life, to this point where I could say to her, I don't foresee you leaving the hospital. And she said, Well, I don't want to know how much time I have. Okay, but let's talk about where you want to spend that time. She said, At home. Okay, let me tell you how you can make that happen. But in the meantime, you have this amazing family that has gathered around you, that loves you. You clearly are this really, I don't even know the right word, just this amazing matriarch of your family. They still rely on you and your wisdom and your words, and you have this great opportunity where you can write them letters, and there was young grandson in the room, it was maybe 2, write him letters for his birthdays, for his graduation, for his wedding, for when he has his first baby. That written advice from you will be so valuable, and your legacy will live on for years to come because you've done that. So that is some advice that I give to people, to think about what they can leave behind rather than what they're taking away from their family by dying.
I think that's I love that advice, and I remember you mentioning that last time, and I think that's just so beautiful to focus on the legacy you're leaving behind. I think it brings a lot of peace to people, I would imagine, to picture that they're still gonna be a part of those special days, because I think a lot of that pain around, if we talk about the psychological side of knowing you're not gonna be there anymore, is knowing you're not gonna be there for the graduation or seeing your grandchild to be born, your child to be born, whatever it is, right? I think that there's still going to be a piece of you that's honored and remembered and held on to. I think that is that you can't even put into words what that means to people, and I'm sure you've seen that, for people that have done that and taken that advice. Do you find that that's something people I'm sure it's a range of responses. Are a lot of people like, "Yeah, I wanna do that, that sounds great," or are there people that have a hard time, you know, even picturing that and
So
imagining
it's
that?
it's actually something I've really just recently started focusing on and discovering that I do think there's a kind of a shift in our mindset from what I'm missing out on to how, like you said, how I can still be a part of it. And I think that yesterday's response to that was, "Oh, wow, that's such good advice. Thank you." And so it doesn't have to be that. And I know there are other things that are important to you and your family,
Right,
some grandmas have really amazing recipes, and what a genuine gift to handwrite that recipe on a recipe card for your loved ones, frame it, give it to them as something that'll live on forever. Every family meal that you have with that recipe you're included in that.
right.
So I don't have a wide array of responses. I would say in the last few months, really since I started my business, it's really just kind of been eye-opening to me. And I typically, and this is why these conversations are important, because typically in the hospital, I'm dealing with people who are actively dying and aren't going to have months or years to do this. It does take time. You still have to have your be cognizant and have your wits about you. And in the last stages of most of our chronic illnesses, we don't. So I think that that's something really important to discuss at the beginning of your diagnosis if you get dementia, because in a few months or years, you may not be able to do these things, right? So I'm excited to see more responses and what I get and what people leave behind. It's going to be
Yeah,
a really big gift to me.
yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful idea, and I think it's again, just focusing it and being able to turn it into a moment to remember, and I think for the family that are receiving, whether it's a video or letter, whatever it is, to be able to know they spent the last moments of their life thinking about you. I think that's what makes it so sentimental, right? Is knowing that, you know, they were still selfless in that way and trying to think about you, even though what they're going through is some of the worst moments of their life. But I think it's that transformation of turning it from worst moment into, okay, I finished out well, right? And I made it to the end and was still surrounded by people I loved. If that was your experience, if you're lucky to have those kind of opportunities in your life.
I love the way you worded it. I finished well. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a finish well and make it to the end with grace and humility, because I think that's what I would hope for the end of my life. I know I've not been in as many of these situations as you have. And I guess on the flip side, what kind of advice can you offer to people that feel like they are struggling and maybe you're not in that moment yet of accepting it with so much grace, whether it's a family member grieving that's having problems letting go, if it's the person themselves that's getting ready to pass and they're still in that moment of mourning and being angry and all these different emotions, what kind of advice can you offer and give somebody to help turn it into those better experiences for them?
So it is hard. We definitely go through the 5 stages of grieving and loss even before the loss. And if you can skip the denial part, that would be great. I think that would be, if you could just be open and hear what everyone's saying. And death doesn't always feel like dying. I've had multiple patients say to me, "I don't feel like I'm dying," but you are. And regardless, we all do.
Right.
I think that the more conversations you have about it, the easier the conversations become. And so
Mm.
taking the opportunity to work those when things happen, make that an opportunity to talk about it. I think that there's all sorts of grief. I think there are multiple people on this platform even that talk about grieving and offer counseling and support groups and that type of thing.
Well, the next question I was going to ask is a little bit more of insight into the services you are offering people, or whether it's currently offering, what you hope it becomes. I know you're kind of in a stage of launching several things, much as I am, and what kind of tangible solutions you see to helping people. Because I think a lot of this is theoretical, right? Like have conversations,
Mhm, mhm.
talk about these things. Yeah.
Right. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. I am a newly launched business and super excited because I actually really enjoy having these conversations. And I know that seems really grim to somebody, but it is such an intimate moment in people's lives. And so many people don't even know where to start. As far as resources, I do have a couple of different sized guides, so to speak. One that's a super simple checklist in case the big one's overwhelming. But they
Right.
discuss, what kind of documentation you need to make sure that your wishes are honored and you have the right people speaking for you when you can't speak. Those are very important things that we all should have at any age ready to go. And then for people who are you need a little more hand holding than just a guide or a checklist with some reflective questions, I'm starting to do some live sessions where we kind of walk through. And those are great because I can tailor it to whatever you're dealing with right now, where you
Mm.
are right now. If your loved one has a chronic illness, there are very specific things about each chronic illness that everyone should know and what that looks like and what
Right.
to expect. So that's something that's coming. Long term, I really want to build up the legacy portion of what I'm talking about and help people to really kind of think around how they can leave a legacy. There are some really big scale ways to do that, and there are the really small, intimate ways, like we've talked about, letters and sippy cards and that kind of thing. And so I'm really, that's kind of like the icing on the cake for me. I want people to have these conversations. I want to help them have these conversations because they're scary, they're overwhelming, and to me, they're actually enjoyable. And I love getting to know families in this way. But I'm also looking forward to kind of shifting the focus and the fear away from death and giving joy for leaving something behind.
Yeah, no, I think all of that is beautiful. And I think what I love about what you're doing too is giving multiple stages of resources. Cause I do think, right, like starting with your research, knowing that there's somebody that has been able to compile, hey, here's things that you might not have even considered. I'm sure there's a lot of things that people don't consider because it's your first time thinking about this. I would hope this isn't a conversation to have happened in your life. Knowing that, just having the right resources there to be able to do your research, right? And then taking a step further into the conversations and to these other activities that you can do as well too, I think is really important. And so kind of on that note, what do you find is kind of the most surprising thing for a lot of people that they don't anticipate needing to have a conversation about a certain topic?
So, CPR. I think people don't understand when CPR and life support are beneficial and when they aren't.
Mm,
And I oftentimes find myself saying, it's not like what you see on TV.
mm,
On TV, people have CPR, they go home the same day, and that's just not reality. The reality is that if you're over 65, they'll like and have CPR, that only 8% of those people are alive a year later. And the ones who make it out of the hospital are not living a good life. CPR is meant for young people. It is very successful for most people when they're in the hospital, regardless, but it's meant for young people. Young people's freedom from chronic illness and older organs make it much more successful long term. It is traumatic. It is uncomfortable. There's literally nothing that we do that's comfortable in the ICU. And so when I say that to people, they are shocked. That can't be true. You're going to save my life. I'm going to, keep living. I also kind of feel like people are surprised when I tell them that everybody dies. And that part I don't understand?
I
Yeah.
think it's a lot of hypotheticals that I mean, until you kind of encounter that for the first time, I can even remember being in college when my grandfather passed away, and that was something I wasn't particularly close to him, so it was kind of a different kind of grieving in that sense of what I wished our relationship
Mhm.
had been, and knowing that there wouldn't be that opportunity. But I think that was probably one of the first times I actually had seen somebody pass away and dealing with that feeling, right? And I can remember a time before that in I think I was in high school or middle school, and my sister had a pretty severe health scare that I was there for. She's completely healthy now. It was a weird fluke of an event that happened, but I was there witnessing that and just remember that feeling of like, I don't know what's going on with her. I don't know, is she sick? Is she gonna die? Like in that moment, we had no clue what was going on, right? And it was that lack of control and that fear of what's gonna happen in this moment that I didn't anticipate. And I just remember it shaking me afterwards because that was the first time I kind of realized, oh, we're all human. Like something's gonna happen to everybody at that point. And for me, it became a question of what do I actually believe in? You know, talking about religious beliefs or different aspects,
Mhm,
whatever your belief system is too, which I'm sure you've seen that play a vast role in so many different ways for people, right? How they kind of coincide the realities of life with the hypotheticals that we all talk about as a child, right? Or teenager when you're growing up and kind of being
mhm.
confronted with that for the first time can be a lot of intense emotions for somebody to handle on their own.
It is, it is, and I think too the religious beliefs become so important. And in my area, I'm in a very predominantly Christian area, and so many people say I'm waiting for a miracle, I'm hoping for a miracle, and that's great. I believe that miracles happen, and I've seen some, and so I do believe it. I don't think that that's the everyday. So I think that regardless of what we believe, that we're going to live forever or survive forever,
Right.
we still need to be prepared for if a miracle doesn't happen. The other thing we'll tell people about that is that if you're believing in a miracle, you're believing in a very big God that
Mm,
can, undo death. That's really what you're believing in, which is great. I
yeah.
want to believe in big things like that too. But that big God doesn't base his miracles on what we decide. So we can still make the choice for comfort. We can still make the choice to withdraw care to allow for comfort
Right.
and for a miracle at the same time. Our decisions and our choices don't influence whether a miracle happens or not. That's not a miracle if we're doing
Yeah.
all of the things and waiting for something to happen. So that's something that I do try to portray to people, that we have to still prepare. Hope is good, until it keeps you from preparing.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that concept and that idea, and I think it's still regardless, there's actions, and you can't just will away everything that you face, because in that case, every single placebo would work if we all fully
Right.
believed, no.
If only.
Yeah, yeah, if only that would be great if we could automatically cure every single ailment and illness and challenge that we face. Talking a little bit more about your personal story and some things that you have faced. What obviously I want to share what you feel comfortable sharing, but what kind of things have you learned from your own family and things that you have seen with caregiving? Whether it's from taking care of people yourself or watching other caregivers in your family, because I know you kind of mentioned you had, like, a multi-support system kinda going
Yes.
on there for a second. Yeah.
My my mom is in her mid-60s, and last year my grandfather passed away. My grandmother is blind and was living alone fairly successfully on her own with multiple frequent check-ins or overnights occasionally, multiple times a week. Um, and then so my grandfather died in June, then in September or October, I think it was September, my stepdad had a major stroke and was paralyzed on one side. So now my mom was in this position where she was taking care of him and having to sort out taking care of her own mother at the same time, um, with her brother, and that is not a happy situation. As time went on, my stepdad is now walking, which is amazing. Really want to give my mom so much credit for being relentless at making sure he gets to therapy. And they're going 5 days a week still a year later, and relentless at he's 100% disabled veteran. And so if anybody out there has had to do any sort of work with any sort of insurance or VA benefits and trying to get those, it is a full-time job. And it is ridiculous. It is so difficult to maneuver through all of that. But she has done it. in such an amazing way. And I'm exhausted thinking about what my mom has gone through. My grandmother
Yeah.
developed was hospitalized for UTI and became more difficult to care for. And we've had some legal issues as well. Things that I like to brag about my mom for is that, and I know it's kind of, people don't like to hear other people say, take care of yourself because it's overwhelming. And my mom has still gone to the gym 3 to 5 times a week.
Mm,
In spite of all this, she's still taking care of herself. My mom, my girls, and I have all started journaling together every day, things that we're grateful for. So she's taking care of her mental health. And it's a beautiful thing to see that while this caregiving journey is overwhelming, really, truly, it's overwhelming to me, and I'm not in the middle of it. I'm
just
helpful as
watching
help
it, yeah.
be, but I'm watching it and thinking, my mom is this Wonder Woman. Like she's just
Yeah.
a hero to me. And I think about all of the people going through their own caregiving journeys and how, in their own way, they're uniquely overwhelming and difficult. There's still
Mm,
joy, there's
definitely.
still good moments. I mean, for crying out loud, my grandmother was such a beautifully demented woman who we had to fight over showers and stuff. But once I got her in there, those were the best memories I have with my grandmother is laughing with her while bathing her in the shower and telling her, "You're
Right.
acting like a toddler, but I love you anyway," and her just laughing and
Yeah.
saying, "Yeah, I am." It's such there's so much joy in being there and doing the thing, but it is hard, and so everybody's journey looks different. I like to tell people, if you know people that are caregivers, especially for dementia patients, because I have a heart for dementia patients, um, don't come to them and ask them, "How can I help?" Because even coming up with a list of how can I help
It's a
is
lot.
overwhelming for them,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. I know I need a lot, but I don't at the moment, I don't know
Well,
what it.
and I think too, it's especially for dementia patients or family as well too, like, it's hard to know what other people's comfort level is. Like,
Mhm.
you even being comfortable with helping your grandmother with a bath, like, that's something a lot of people would
Can't
never
do.
feel comfortable doing, right? So I think that's some of the burden of when people ask, "How can I help?" You don't know what they're willing to do
Right.
too, right?
Right.
Like, maybe they are good with that too, and they'd be happy to volunteer to come in one day a week to take that off of your plate, right?
Mhm.
But you don't know.
So, come to them with a list. Can I do your laundry? Can I mow your lawn? Can I take your car for an oil change? Can I sit with your mom while you go grocery shopping and we'll write some of those legacy letters together? Um, just come to them with a list. And if you want to buy them a gift, buy them a laundry service, buy them a Walmart Plus subscription because Walmart Plus will deliver.
Yeah,
They will put
or
your groceries
Philip
away.
or something,
And
yeah,
so not only will they deliver, they'll put your groceries away. They have a background check. They wear a camera so that it is safe.
right,
What a great gift to never have to go grocery shopping again,
yeah,
because we all know that takes time and it takes time away from the home. And sometimes
yeah,
that's just such a big challenge.
it
And so
should.
come to them with a list of things that you are prepared to offer. Can I bring you dinner once a week? And there's all sorts of things that you can do to help relieve the burden of the caregiver and not put the burden on them to try to figure out what they need.
Right, right, yeah, no, because it's that mental load that I think a lot of people talk about in relation to marriages, right, and how a household shares labor, but I
Hmm.
think that applies a lot for caregivers and how they're handling the mental load of everything, because it's not just showing up, it's also that grieving of my mom is progressing a lot faster than I thought she would be, and I don't know how much longer she's gonna be here, and then you pair that with, now I need to talk to her about what are her funeral arrangements even gonna look like, right? Like,
Hmm.
all these different things that you have to consider, it's that mental side, and so that's what I love hearing about what you've learned from your mom is just taking away that need to take care of all the different aspects of your life, whether it's your physical needs, your
Hmm.
emotional, your mental. Social needs too is another big one, right? Like, how are you're feeling your social needs, and I think especially even just hearing that she's going to the gym regularly, like, I'm sure if he's doing that much physical therapy, that's probably a lot for her to be physically involved with as well too, you know?
I honestly, I don't know how she does it. I don't know, but I tell her all the time how proud I am of her for
Yeah.
not forgetting herself or not sacrificing herself.
Mm.
And I have been scolded before, well, that's a sacrifice we want to make. Well, that's your choice, but not everybody chooses to be a caregiver, and not everybody chooses to sacrifice. They feel like they have to. And so if that's the choice that you're making, I'm supportive of that too. But we have to remember that everybody's coming from a different place. And it is like a marriage too, in that, once you're, so many marriages, when you get to the end of raising your children, you're like, okay, what's left? Because we didn't focus on ourselves. And so if you enter this caregiving journey and you have nothing left for yourself when that person is gone, who are you going to be? And I've seen that, and it's devastating. If you have wrapped your whole identity around being a caregiver and then you can no longer be a caregiver, it is completely devastating. We're so much more than just what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you felt that with your own career, like being involved with taking care of people as well, and in a little bit of a different capacity, as a professional? But have you ever felt that push of making work your life, and how did you kind of come out of that or put boundaries in place so that didn't happen?
I think earlier on in my career, I did. It became all sorts of things to me. It became an escape. I knew I was good at it, and that feels good. So I would spend more time there than at home, because it felt good. And but also it became that's who my identity was. And I think that happens with motherhood too, that, you become mom and you don't know who you are outside of mom sometimes. And so I think that we are very, there's more to us than just one facet. We have multiple of them. And I'm a nurse, I'm a mom, I am a dog lover owner, I am a friend. I love all sorts of different things, and I have to give a little bit to each of those things in order to cultivate that.
Mm.
And I think that's how you come out of it, is you recognize that you have value in more than just one area.
No, I love
Yeah.
that.
And that doesn't mean that there aren't seasons in your life where you're cultivating one area very heavily,
Mhm.
in caregiving. I think that's what we see. But you still have to feed your mental, your physical, your
Right.
social, spiritual.
Right, and I think it's very the analogy I like to think of is the spinning plates, right? And you can only spin 2 plates at a time, but today I might have these 2 plates, and tomorrow they might be 2 different plates, and that's okay, right? Like, you go through seasons of what you need to focus on, and if right now it's 100% taking care of this person because that's the season of life, this is what it looks like right now, that's great. If, you know, they leave tomorrow, hopefully I was still spinning another plate that I'm now gonna hold on to that's gonna take me through the next season of life that they're not in no longer, right? And you still have that piece of your identity that, 'cause at the core, I like what you said, that it's you, and I think that's a lot of what caregiving has turned into, is learning to take care of yourself too, right? And learning to have that relationship with yourself, 'cause that's the most important piece of all of it, like you said. I think that's the biggest takeaway, I think, from all of it is how do you still leave your legacy in your own way as well too? Because I think even in your work, helping other people, that's gonna be your legacy, is helping people find themselves, and I think that's really fulfilling and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And so I guess just in closing, do you have any other advice that you would kinda give, a caregiver if they're feeling really overwhelmed? Maybe they're looking at all of these conversations they need to start having with mom and dad or whoever it is that is in their life. What is one small step you would encourage them to take to start this journey?
You ask really hard questions. I think I
Well, and
step.
you can even say multiple steps too. Maybe one step is oversimplifying too much for
Right.
this heavy of a topic.
No, I think any step forward is a good step. And so, just like in anything that seems overwhelming, find one small thing that you feel like I can do this. Whether that's talk about who's going to make decisions for the person you're caregiving for, who's going to make
Right.
decisions for you, or whether that's I'm going to start a gratitude journal today and just write down the things that I'm thankful for, or whether that is reaching out to someone to help you take the next step, to have a little hand holding. It's finding the thing that you can start with today, counting that as an accomplishment, and then finding the
Mm,
thing for tomorrow. And the counting that as an accomplishment is a big part of being successful. If you don't count your accomplishments and you start each new day with a new task, but don't recognize that you were successful in yesterday's tasks, you're not going to feel successful and you're still going to feel overwhelmed. When you're recognizing, oh, I did this, this, and this, and this, you're going to feel accomplished. You're going to feel prepared and confident moving forward. And just because you're afraid doesn't mean you can't take the next step. Fear is going to be there. Being brave and having courage doesn't mean the fear isn't there. But caregiving is a very brave journey that we embark on.
I agree with everything you're saying, and I love it. And I think just everyone that I meet and get to talk to that is a caregiver that works professionally in this field just have the biggest hearts. And despite it being a lot of it is what I would deem kind of invisible work that a lot of people don't see, or maybe society doesn't celebrate it in conventional ways. Like there's no certificate or diploma that you get when you're caring for somebody. But I think there's just so much heart there and so much meaning and growth. And I think everybody's story, I wish there was time to interview every single person, right? Because I think everyone has their own battles they're fighting and different things that they're doing. And so I appreciate that reminder from you to be able to, celebrate it and to really focus on that legacy that you're leaving behind for people and honoring these stories to make it last a lifetime and not just, the short time that we have people with us, right?
You're already doing the legacy work, Mikayla. It's beautiful.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you for being willing to share all of these things today. Is there anything else that you final thoughts or advice or words to share?
No, I genuinely have such a heart for people going through their caregiving journees, and I genuinely think they're brave, and I hope that they can see themselves that way. I think that would be it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Care Collective podcast. If this conversation with Kristy made you think about the care that you provide for others, I would love to keep the conversation going. You can follow us on Instagram at carecollective.pod, where we share weekly stories, tips, and conversations just like this one. And if you ever have a caregiving question or situation you want advice on, send it our way. We feature your questions in our weekly post and sometimes even in future episodes. And if it's a topic I can't personally answer, I would love to find a professional who can. So don't be shy. Please reach out, send us a DM, or submit a form on our website to connect and be a part of this growing community of caregivers and change makers. So until next time, take care of yourself while you're taking care of others.